Hey, welcome back to the stash. Wolverine. Just hearing that name conjures up an image. Claws unleashed, a silhouette in the dark, a force of pure instinct and raw emotion. He's a superhero, a force of nature, a walking contradiction, a man forever at war with himself. He's the guy that can heal from anything, but somehow the scars never fade. But what defines Wolverine? Is it the claws, the attitude, the mystery? While all of that is a part of the package, there's one story that didn't just refine Wolverine. It defined him. Wolverine from 1982 by Frank Miller and Chris Claremont isn't just a comic. It's the comic, the one that took a fan-favorite berserker and made him something more. Before this, Logan was the X-Men's wildcard, the unpredictable brawler who played by his own rules. But this book, this gave him purpose. It took him out of the team dynamic and threw him into a world that tested not just his strength, but his soul. This isn't just a Wolverine story, this is the Wolverine story. And today, we're going to talk about how this comic changed everything. But before we do that, I want to take a quick second to say a massive shout out to Nathan Garcia for requesting this video. Thank you so much for becoming a channel member, it truly does mean the world to me, and I hope that you and everyone else watching enjoys. Also, here at The Stash, we're on a mission to hit 8,000 subscribers before the end of the month. It's a huge ask, but with your help, I know we can do it. So if you love Wolverine or just comic content in general, feel free to stick around and maybe hit that subscribe button. But anyway, with all that being said, let's jump right back into the video. Before 1982, Wolverine was a storm waiting to happen, a ticking time bomb of claws and attitude, a character packed with untapped energy, just waiting for the right moment to explode onto the scene. He of course first showed up in the Incredible Hulk issues 180 to 182, a Canadian government agent with more bite than bark, essentially a wild dog on a leash, snarling and snapping, but not yet fully realized. He had the claws, sure, the aggression, the mystery, but none of the depth that would make him an enduring legend. Then came Giant Size X-Men issue 1, the moment that brought him into something larger than himself. A new team, a new purpose, but still missing the one thing that would make him Wolverine. But even then, he was still just the tough guy, the muscle, the wild card, the guy who clashed with Cyclops just for the hell of it. He was entertaining, sure, but he didn't really feel essential in my opinion. Chris Claremont, recognizing the raw potential bubbling under the surface, started peeling back the layers in Uncanny X-Men, giving us glimpses of something more, of a man tormented by ghosts of a past he couldn't quite remember, of a warrior who lived by a code, even if no one else could see it. Honor, regret, a deep well of pain masked by bravado, a past that haunted him like a specter he could never quite outrun, lingering just behind his every move. But it wasn't until this limited series that everything clicked, that we really saw Logan for who he was. Without the team, without the distractions, without the safety net, no team to lean on, no Professor X to reel him in. Just Logan, his demons, and the fight of his life. One that would define him forever. Growing up, I was obsessed with the X-Men animated series from the 90s. That show was my introduction to the X-Men and Wolverine. He was iconic in that show. His gruff voice, unstoppable healing factor, his unshakable attitude. I loved every second of it. But despite that, I had never really dived into the world of X-Men in the comics. They always felt like this vast, overwhelming universe, and I wasn't sure where to start. Then I found Wolverine 1982, the limited series, or maybe it found me. I remember walking through a comic shop one day, my eyes were scanning the shelves when suddenly, there he was, Wolverine. Claws out, staring right at me from the cover, as if daring me to pick up the book as he pointed. And I did. Something about it felt right, like I was meant to read that story. I still remember the first time I read Wolverine the limited series, and I wasn't expecting it to hit as hard as it did. I had mostly known Logan as the team bully, basically, the way he'd pick on Cyclops. And yes, they did dive into more of his backstory that left me with some more questions about his true being. But this story, this was different. Like, this wasn't about how tough he was or how many people he could fight. This was about who he was, and that changed everything for me. I remember staring at those pages, taking in Frank Miller's brutal yet poetic fight sequences, feeling the weight of Chris Claremont's narration, the way that Logan's inner monologue dug into his self-doubt and pain, and how every fight wasn't just about survival, but about control, about proving to himself that he could be more than just a weapon. It was psychological warfare, a battle fought just as much in his mind as it was with his claws. The loneliness, the rage, the quiet moments where Logan questioned if he could ever be more than just a killer. That conflict resonated with me. It made me see Wolverine not just as a character, not just another member of the X-Men, but as something more. Someone who was always fighting, even when no one else could see the battle. Now, reading this series wasn't just about watching Logan fight, it was about understanding him. The loneliness, the constant push and pull between honor and instinct, the fear that no matter how much he fought it, he would always be the monster others saw him as. It was captivating in a way I never expected it to be. Like I wasn't just reading his journey, I was living it alongside him. I love how this comic wasn't just action, but rather storytelling in its most raw form possible. And after I turned that final page, I knew I'd never look at Wolverine the same way ever again. At its heart, this story is about one thing. Who is Wolverine? Is he a man or is he a beast? Is he a warrior guided by honor or a force of nature doomed to destruction? That's the existential weight he carries on his shoulders and the battle he fights every day. And by the end of this full story that even continues in the X-Men series, I'm still not sure of the answer. Miller and Claremont don't just tell a Wolverine story, no, they craft a samurai epic, a tale of discipline, of control, of a man struggling against the tide of his own nature. Logan isn't just some brute force, but rather he's a Ronin, a masterless warrior, lost in a world that demands him to be nothing more than a weapon. He longs for purpose, but every step forward feels like another battle against his own instincts. His love for Mariko isn't just romance, it's his shot at redemption. A proper chance to be seen as something more than a killer. She represents the life he could have had, the path of honor and love that always seems just out of reach. But to be worthy of that life, he has to prove to himself and to the world he's more than just his instincts, that he can control the rage, and then he can be more than just a weapon. The tragedy though, no matter how hard he tries, the world won't let him be anything else. It keeps pushing him back into the role of a killer, a soldier, a monster, and maybe deep down, Logan fears that's all he'll ever be. Now, I love how in this book, Japan isn't just a backdrop, it's a battleground for Logan's soul. It's where he learns what control really means, the samurai code, the discipline, the honor. It all speaks to something deep inside him. But at the same time, the crime families, the betrayals, the bloodshed, they pull him back toward the animal. Logan isn't just in Japan, it feels like he's of Japan. The land challenges him in ways that no battlefield could ever. He's constantly drawn to the values of that nation, yet constantly tested by its criminal underworld where betrayal lurks behind every corner. And Mariko represents the life he wants, one built on love, tradition, and self-control. But Japan also forces him to confront the darkest parts of himself. Every alley fight, every silent duel, every moment spent battling the forces of corruption pushes him closer to his breaking point. He tries to embrace the ideals of the samurai, but his berserker nature never stays buried for long. It's in Japan, where he truly understands that no matter how much he may yearn for peace, the fight will always find him. And maybe, just maybe, there's no escaping what he really is. Now, before The Dark Knight Returns and Sin City, Frank Miller was a man truly on his way to legendary status with his incredible work on the Daredevil title. Granted, he was still properly finding his way, and looking back you can see the beginnings of a master storyteller finding his signature style. I love how Miller's artwork moves. It's cinematic, and the fight scenes aren't just cool, they're alive. Every slash, every snarl, every bead of sweat means something. He draws Wolverine not just as a superhero, but as a warrior, a man on the edge of something primal. His use of shadows, negative space, and sharp, jagged movements make Logan feel like a predator just barely holding himself back. I adore how Miller just doesn't draw Wolverine, but like the series, he defines him. The hunched stance, the narrowed eyes, the taut muscles caught with the barely restrained fury. His movements aren't just fast and brutal, they're calculated. Each panel captures the sheer intensity of Logan's presence, making every fight scene feel like a deadly ballad of blood and precision. Miller's art moves, man, it's just different level. The use of negative space creates a sense of isolation, which only reinforces Logan's solitary nature. The heavy shadows cast across his face make him appear almost mythic, like an untamed force constantly battling to contain itself. You could practically hear the sound of his claws. You can feel the impact of each punch and the weight behind every step he takes. And the end result is not Wolverine just looking cool, but rather Wolverine being simply Wolverine. A true warrior, a survivor, a man forever on the edge of something primal. And it's this vision of Wolverine shaped by Miller's and Claremont's vision that stuck with us long after we've turned the final page. Then, there's the line. The one that didn't just become Wolverine's mantra. It became a declaration, a warning, and a promise all rolled into one. I'm the best there is at what I do, but what I do isn't very nice. It's simple, it's brutal, and it's the perfect summary of Wolverine's entire existence. That line to me is everything. It oozes confidence but carries the weight of regret. It's a statement of skill but also a confession of what that skill has cost him. It's pain, self-awareness, and reluctant acceptance of the monster within. This comic gave Wolverine his voice. It wasn't just another tough guy catchphrase, but rather it was his identity. It made him matter in a way he had never had before, elevating him beyond just another superhero with claws and a temper, and it proved that he wasn't just another X-Man. He was the X-Man, the one who could stand alone, who didn't need a team to be compelling. This series properly marked that he wasn't just a side character anymore, but rather he was a leading man. This single comic reshaped Wolverine's entire trajectory. It paved the way for the Wolverine solo series and even movies like Logan itself. The Wolverine we all know and love today, the lone warrior, the man trapped between honor and instinct, the legend himself, it all started here. And so why does Wolverine 1982 still matter after all this time? Because it wasn't just another story, it was a revelation, a transformation, a declaration of who Wolverine truly was. It's the moment where Wolverine stopped being just another fan-favorite brawler with a mysterious past and became something more, something legendary. This comic gave him layers, for it wasn't just about making him stronger or cooler, but rather about making him feel real, feel human. It gave him purpose, philosophy, and an inner conflict that made every battle mean something more. It wasn't just about slashing through enemies or delivering snarky one-liners, it was about identity, about fighting the battle within, the struggle between the man and the beast, between honor and instinct, and that aspect of the book is just so good and enthralling to read. Some heroes take decades to be fully realized. They evolve through retcons, reboots, and reinterpretations, but Wolverine, he found himself in 4 issues that cut away the excess and revealed the raw, unfiltered essence of who he truly was. For as I said before, this wasn't just another Wolverine story. It was the Wolverine story, the one that set the standard, the one that made everything else possible. Since then, every great Wolverine story, every adaptation, every moment that defines him, all of it traces back to this comic. It's the foundation, the blueprint, the moment that made Logan more than just a comic character. It made him inevitable. The Wolverine we love today was forged here, in these pages through blood, steel, and unbreakable will. Because at the end of the day, Wolverine isn't about winning. He isn't about glory. He's about survival. And no matter what you throw at him, no matter how many times he's beaten down, he always gets back up. Because, well, maybe I shall let Wolverine himself explain it to you.
My name is Wolverine. I'm the best there is at what I do, but what I do isn't very nice.